Okay, this video is going to develop a way for you to start by connecting the PC up to the PLC. When you open up the PC rather, you'll see a login page. Now some of these PCs, the login page, you can just hit enter and go right on through. Others, you're going to have, like this one, you're going to have to type in the password. Well, and on all of them, the password is going to be the same as the username. So we're going to do FCC-D112, enter. Alright, we'll back up a little bit and so you can see the screen at the desktop. Okay, two programs that you're going to be looking for: RSLINK Classic, RSLogix 500. This is your communication program. This is your programming program. So the first thing we're going to do is open up RSLinks. I've already got the, I'll slide over here, you can see that I've already got the PLC powered up. That's a key thing. Always remember, the first thing you got to do is put power on your PLC. These are plus 24 volt DC PLCs. Do not put 110 on them. Okay? Alright, now in this particular case, again, we've already got a serial connection connected to this. Let me zoom in here so you can see it. You can see where it's plugged in there. And I'm going to remove the camera just for a second and show you behind it where it's hooked up, because this particular connection is an RS-232 connection. Alright, so I'll try to be pretty easy so I don't shake it too bad. But looking in behind here, you can see that cable is plugged into, hang on, let me get there. There, you can see that it's plugged in to that port underneath that printer cable, that monitor cable. Right there. That is an RS-232 link. Now some of you may go to a PLC that doesn't have that cable connection on it, but it will have one of these devices on it. There's your cable. This is the RS-232. That's the serial cable. But what's going to have is this little box right here, which is a USB to serial converter. And you'll follow it and you'll notice that it's plugged up to a USB port on the PLC. Now if that's the case, then you're going to have to look for the device or the port that's connected to. So let's go back into this PC and I'll show you how to get there. Okay, the way to find out what COM port that USB to serial adapter is plugged into is you're going to have to go to the device manager. So go here, type in and go to, if you can see that, I'm going to go to Device Manager. This screen will then come up, and let's see. It hadn't found this controller yet, so it's just been plugged up, but you can, if we update the driver for that, well, point being, if you find one, this should have in somewhere in here it should say serial to USB adapter. This particular one I just pulled it out because it had one on there. I thought the port might be in there already, but if you go to Device Manager, you find it, you'll see a COM port out here. When you get ready to connect your RSLinks to the PLC, you've got to tell it that you're using that COM port and not COM port 1. You'll see there it's looking at that particular COM port. Okay. Now let's get back in here to the okay. Let me zoom in a little bit now. Okay, your PLC is powered. It's plugged up to the serial port. We're going to open up RSLinks. Let me get in here where you can see some of this. Okay, RSLinK Classic is opened up. You can see that you have, as of right now, there are two main links, two main connection links with communication call. We've got what's called ABDF1. That is a serial connection. So in this particular case, this PLC already has a serial connection and should be able to talk to that PLC rather easily. The other one that you see listed here is an Ethernet connection. We're not going to need that right now, so I wouldn't worry about it. But having done that one, we'll click there, and if we double click on it, you'll see here shows the COM1 port, and this is the PLC that it sees. It has an untitled name on it. You can always name it whatever you want, but right now it's just untitled. Okay, so we know that right now at this point it's talking to it. However, if it were not talking to it, if it did not see and if it did not have an ABDF1 port connection, we would have to go into the communications. Get over there where you can see it. Not bad. We'd have to go into communications, configure drivers. Available driver types would be the RS232 DF1. I think you can see it. If I can get this mouse to stay steady. You can see it there. So we would click on it, tell it to add new. We're going to add an ABDF2 now. This is going to be a second serial port. It doesn't matter if you got ABDF1 already, you really don't need this one, but if you need to set up a new one, here it is. You tell it OK, then you're going to tell it to go to COM1, and the beauty of this PLC is it'll auto configure your link. Well, it says it's unable to open that port because the port's already being used. Okay, so let me back out and let's just do away. Let's just stop. Well, and delete. It's not going to let me delete this one because I'm already hooked up to it and connected and talking. But again, if you needed to add a new one, just click add new, click there, tell it OK, and then auto configure, and it should say in just a short period of time, auto configuration successful. Once that's done, if you close that out, you'll find that you have you'll have an ABDF1 COM port, which means you can talk to the PLC now from the PC. Okay, so we're going to minimize that. So we now have, let me back out again. You can see down here in the bottom with that icon right there that means we have a COM link established between the PC and the PLC. Alright, so I'm going to back out now, and now that we've got the COM link established, we're going to open up our programming software. Double click on RSLogix 500. Back out again so you can see the whole screen. But I think I'll go in right here. If you look real close, this is very similar to your Logic Pro. There's your Logic Pro programming commands. All the other stuff is very similar to the Logic Pro. Alright, but again, the difference that we're going to run into here is when you get ready to, for example, the first lab I'm set up at right here now is PLC Lab 1. Okay, this is the one where you're going to have to write a program with your software that your Logic Pro traffic light program will run. The difference here is the outputs and inputs in this particular program are going to be different from your Logic Pro program. Okay? Alright, so again, we're going to start a new program. So if I do File, New, now look what popped up when I did File, New. What it did was told me, okay, we're going to start a new program, but what processor are you using? What processor are we using? Well, the processor is determined by the model number on the PLC. Okay, so let me see. Let me back out here, back up just a little bit. And if you look here, this is the inside of that processor. And you see this is a 1764 28BXB Series B. So we're going to go to our setup screen here. If you go back over here again, you can see that we can't see the side of that processor right there. If we could take these off, and we can, but if we took those off, we could see the side of that processor and read that right there. Read what I just read. So now we know what our processor is. Let's go in here, and what we're looking for is a 1764. We're going to scroll down and look for a 1764. Okay, here's 1764s. Now I don't see the BXB 28 BXB, but this processor is a if you look at this, back up again, if you look here real closely, this is a MicroLogic 1500. It's an LSP, and even though somebody's written A on here, I would recommend that you always start with B, because most of the PLCs out here are B. This one just happens to be labeled an A. Okay, so we're going to go into the processor models again, and we're going to pick MicroLogic 1500 LSP Series B. And tell it okay. Now then, this part looks very similar again to what you saw in your Logic Pro programs. Well, let's see, I guess it'd be easier if I backed out so you can see it. Okay, here's your tabs for all your different commands: counters, timers, user bits, inputs, outputs, compare. As you go across, you can see that others there. Compute math, move logical, file miscellaneous, all there very similar to what you had on your Logic Pro program. Okay? Difference is, if you look down the side over here, let me scroll in just a little bit. In particular, right there. Okay, you'll see here's where all your data files are. There's your output data file, your input data file, your timers, counters, integer bits, and all those others. That's your data files. And looking at this program right now, if we go to the input data file, you can see, let's go up here, you can see there that you have only four words listed. This particular word, this first one right here, I:0.0, and all these 16 bits right there, these are the inputs that are associated with the inputs that are on top of this particular PLC. All right. Now, as I back out, I want to show you one thing real quick, and then I'll get back into this a little again. You can see that this particular PLC has 2 additional cards on it. These are the analog cards. If you have an analog project, you're going to be wiring your analog project up to these cards, to these 2 cards. This is your analog input card, this is your analog output card. You do not connect a discrete button. You don't connect the button to these. These are for analog signals only. These over here are for the buttons. They're for the discrete inputs and outputs, the on-off buttons and things like that. Same as for the outputs on the bottom down here. But one thing that you ought to notice about this data file here, well, let me back up. If I look at this PLC now, this is called the brick. All my inputs here are in slot 0. Slot 0. As I move over, this analog input is in slot 1. This analog output is in slot 2. So if we now look at our data file again, you'll see here is if you read this word right here, this says inputs. The first 0 says slot 0. The dot and the 0 after that is word 0, and then all these 16 zeros here are bits. Each one of the inputs on my PLC is a separate bit address. So if you notice, all these I:0s are saying that these particular words are in slot 0, meaning on the PLC base. It does not know, at this point, the PLC does not know that the analog input cards are there. All right, and if you look, we can do the same thing for the output data file. You'll notice they're all slot 0. Outputs are slot 0. Inputs also are on slot 0, but they're I:0, O:0. So now, how do we get the PLC to know that those analog cards are there? Well, we're going to have to go to the I/O configuration. If you'll notice, it's right there. We're going to have to click on I/O configuration, double click that, and we have a screen that pops up. Now, looking at this screen here, we could go over here and we could read the data, the model number for that particular analog input card right off the side of the card. The beauty of this program, of this particular software here, is if we go to that point right there and tell it to read I/O config, it's going to actually go out there and see what's there to begin with. So we click that, and when we do, you'll notice another screen popped up right there. And looking at this, it tells us the driver is the serial port driver. We're in processor node 1. Now that brings up another point. If you try to communicate with a PLC and you get improper node, a lot of times you'll have to go into the communication setup and change this to a 1 or a 0 or 2 until it actually finds it. I'll show you that maybe in just a minute. But now that we've got this screen up, let's tell it to read I/O config again. Okay, this is telling me that I picked Series B, but this is actually a Series C processor. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter which one you pick. When you try to get into it, it's going to tell you you have the wrong processor, and it's going to want to correct it for you. So we just tell it, okay. Now then, once we did that, let's go back over to our setup and look. If you look, now, there's our slot 0 where the RSLogix Series C PLC is. Then now it sees that it has an analog input module in slot 1. It has an analog output module in slot 2. So now the PC knows that those two cards are there. The PLC still does not know it yet. At this point now, in order to make the PLC know that those cards are there, we need to download the program. There is no program in there now. It's not going to hurt anything. So we'll back up and we'll go up here, and we're going to tell it to download. Before I do that, let me go back and see. Even though we found the cards and everything, let's go back and look at our input data file. See, now it sees words for input slot 1. It also has said it's input in slot 2, but there is no input card in slot 2, but it's going to create those automatically anyway. But this particular card is only a 4-channel card, so we're only going to be using channel 0, 1, 2, and 3 on the input card. If we go to the output card data file, you'll see it's found slot 2. So it's put 2 words in slot 2, input 0 and input 1. This would be channel 0, channel 1. All right. Now, also, before I do that, let's go back into the I/O configuration. Oops. Sorry. I'm going to go back into the I/O configuration. And double click on my input card. And you'll see now that this screen popped up. Now with this screen, we're going to look at the middle tab, analog input configuration. Once I've done that, you notice now the screen comes up and shows you all 4 channels, channel 0, channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, that are available on that input card. Let's say we're going to wire our analog signal into channel 0. We would enable channel 0. We're going to use the 60 Hertz American frequency. And now my input range. Most of my analog inputs out here are 4 to 20 milliamp. So you can see we've got the options as we slide down through there. Well, there's 4 to 20 milliamps. There's 4 to 20 milliamps. Click on that. We'll leave the data at raw proportional and tell it to apply. Tell it OK. And let's go do the same thing for the output card. We have 2 channels there is all we have, so we're going to enable channel 0. We're also going to let the output be a 4 to 20 milliamp output. This would be useful if you get to the process back there where you're trying to drive the I to P transducer to drive 3 to 15 psi output to that valve. You will need to set up the analog output on channel 0 or channel 1. It doesn't really matter which one you use, but you'll need to set it up for 4 to 20 milliamps. So let's apply that, tell it OK. All right, now that the input and output card know what kind of signal they're going to be getting or sending. All right. Okay, close this, and now you're ready to start programming. And as I said before, when you get to this project over here, when you get to that PLC project number 1, that's going to require you to write your Logic Pro. You're going to be able just to convert your Logic Pro program. You can't download it to this software. You're going to have to rewrite each line. You're going to have to rewrite each line, but each line therefore is going to have to be a change in the output and input address to match what you have on the PLC. Now, those of you that in PLC class, I sent you a copy of a wiring diagram for this particular project. It shows you exactly what to do with each one, but if you look at the addresses there, they are much different than the addresses that you received or that you wrote your program in the Logic Pro simulator. All you have to do is take your program and change the addresses in your program to match the addresses on the PLC. Okay, real easy. You can add a rung. Let's see, click in here and add a rung. You can add as many rungs as you want. Now, the one thing different about this software than the Logic Pro software, if you leave a rung empty, if you leave a rung blank with nothing on it and try to download it, it's going to give you an error message. Let's cut these out and take it back up to just simply one rung right there. You can see if I put that rung in there like that and I don't put anything at all on it and try to download it, I go over here to download. Program has errors, cannot be downloaded. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll zoom in for you. Program has errors, cannot be downloaded. Okay? Well, tell it okay. Let's then at that point, we're going to tell it okay, and at that point I want you to look up to the screen up here at the top, in particular these two little buttons right here. This is verify the file, this is verify the project. This is our file. You can see if you look down at the bottom down here, this is file 2. So we're going to actually have this PLC verify that file. So if I hit that, when I hit it, this error message popped up at the bottom. And what does it say? Rung 0, instruction 0. Here's rung 0, instruction 0. Rung has no instructions. So it tells you, it'll pretty much tell you, if you do a verify, what your problem is. Where'd you make a mistake? Well, we know we got a problem with this one because we don't have anything on that particular rung. All right, so let's back up here, and I'm just simply going to put a simple input and output in there. We'll close that error message out. So I'm going to come here and put just a regular output. Output energize. Put it over there. You can drag it down until it gets green, then turn it loose and it'll be fine. Now, while I'm here I'm going to show you an easy way to address these particular inputs and outputs. If this were input 0, if this was input 0 over on my PLC, all I have to do is double click my data file, grab input 0 right here and drag it and hold the left cursor down and drag it up till it turns green, and you'll see it automatically addresses it for me. I don't have to try to type it in. Same thing with my output data file. This is going to be output 0, so we're going to drag it over here till it turns green. Let it go. Now I have an input and an output, and I didn't have to type the address. Let me back out and show you that. Okay, I don't know how well you can see that, but we have an input and an output ready to go. Let's go over here now and download this program. You can see real quick it went through real fast. Now you can, at this point, you can give it a file name. Zoom in a little bit on this. You can give it a file name. You can call it whatever you want. You put your name there. Anything you want to do with it, that's fine with me. And it's going to save it in what's called thaw space, which is like a buffer. It's a buffer for programs that the deep freeze will not erase. Okay, so we're going to tell it to save it. File already exists. We're going to replace the existing file. It's going to download to the program to the MicroLogic Series C. Processor is in remote run, so we got to take it. We're going to tell it to go into program mode to drop it. Change back to run mode, yes, and go online. And now you can see that let me back up here now. You can see that once it goes online, once we're in remote run and we're online, you'll get that green bar right there. That tells you that power has gotten to right there already. Potential power is there. Until I press input 0 on the PLC trainer, when I press input 0, output 0 is going to energize. Now I can force this. If you notice that I forced it on, you see the on. I don't know if you can see that. I guess I ought to turn it over here where you can. You can see that I forced it on. Therefore, that output in the PLC will be on and have power going to whatever output it's wired to. And that is a quick rundown of how to get your program built into the PLC or into the PC, and then download it to the PLC through RSLinks. And as I said before, if you're doing the PLC Lab 1, all you have to do is follow the wiring diagram that we gave you on the PLC project earlier, and be sure to change the addresses in your Logic Pro program to the addresses that you're wiring to on the particular PLC. For those of you that will get to the pressure switch, the pressure switch is going to be a simple input and output on the PLC. It will actually, the program for it will actually look a lot like this, because all I want you to do is be able to take that pressure switch and address it to input 0, and the light that's over there at the pressure switch will be addressed to output 0. And each time the pressure goes up and down and turns on and off that light, that's what I'm looking to see. I'll probably go over there and set this up at that station so you can see that as well. But for now, this is just the basics of getting started to connect your PC to your PLC and write a program and download a program to it.